George Russell's future at Mercedes is still up in the air, with his 2026 contract talks dragging on. That's because Toto Wolff isn't impressed by the demands on the table. It's not just the salary figure that's offending the Austrian, but also the unusual clauses Russell wants written into the deal. So, where do negotiations stand now? Let's dive in. George Russell's performances this year have already made quite the statement. The 27-year-old has been one of the shining lights of the campaign, one of only two non-McLaren drivers to claim a race victory. Mercedes, meanwhile, are locked in a tight fight for P2 in the Constructors' Championship, having jumped ahead of Ferrari at the Azerbaijan Grand Prix. In Baku, Russell chased home Max Verstappen, ironically the very driver linked to his seat at Mercedes. While Russell's ceiling this year is likely P4 in the drivers' standings, he's carved out a commanding gap over both Ferrari men and rookie teammate Andrea Kimi Antonelli. The young Italian, who is on the brink of inking a new Mercedes deal, did bounce back with a P4 in Azerbaijan, but he still trails Russell by almost 150 points. Team boss Toto Wolff has publicly promised to stick with his current driver pairing, but for Russell, the devil is in the details. Reports suggest his next contract wishlist is long, with salary and term length top of the agenda. According to Autosport Web, Russell is pushing for a 3-year deal at around £20 million per season, matching Lando Norris's payday at McLaren. Wolff, however, is reportedly only willing to offer half that figure, and talks have hit a wall. Russell appears willing to compromise on length, accepting a 1-year deal, but he's digging his heels in on salary and is pushing for an unusual performance clause. Essentially, if he outscores Antonelli by a set margin, his contract would automatically extend. Unsurprisingly, Wolff isn't thrilled about adding such special conditions. Sources close to negotiations suggest the Austrian is deliberately stalling, waiting for Russell to back down. That's despite Wolff once promising not to drag things out beyond Monza. It's a delicate situation for Russell. After waiting 3 long years at Williams for his Mercedes shot, he finally landed the Silver Arrow seat, only to find the car no longer title-worthy. Being cast aside now, just as Mercedes rediscover their winning ways, would sting. Wolff is also playing his own game. Insiders whisper he may insert a clause giving Mercedes flexibility to replace Russell if Verstappen becomes available. And passing on Verstappen is not something Wolff would ever entertain. If that scenario unfolds, former F1 star Juan Pablo Montoya believes Russell's future could lie at Red Bull or Aston Martin, 2 teams he reckons the Briton would strongly consider. He told AS Colombia, he's not going to put himself in that position. He's not going to open the door for Mercedes to take him down. He's not going to let that happen. At that point, it's better to go to Red Bull, go to Aston Martin or something, and go somewhere else. If he's willing to go somewhere else, I think they would consider it strongly, right? Mercedes has no choice. Who is Mercedes going to put in the car? According to Blick, even Mercedes staff are surprised that Toto Wolff hasn't locked in at least one name by now. That hesitation could prove costly. Aston Martin have shown interest in Russell, while Red Bull, under Christian Horner's watch, also had him on their radar. Elsewhere, Flavio Briatore has suggested that Alpine's second seat is likely to come down to either Franco Colapinto or Paul Aron, leaving Russell a particularly attractive asset for any team with ambitions. If Mercedes continue to drag their feet, they risk watching one of the grid's most valuable drivers slip away. Former world champion Jacques Villeneuve didn't mince his words, calling the situation a pointless battle, arguing that neither Mercedes nor Russell really has a better alternative. He explained, George Russell is very good. Out of all the other drivers, he's the one that's always showing consistency in getting the result. He's matured a lot. He doesn't seem to be making the mistakes he used to make. This season, he's really maximizing the points he can get with that team and that car. It sounds like Mercedes are committed to George Russell, and now it's him that doesn't want to commit anymore, because he was annoyed that he had to wait. The thing is, who else would Mercedes sign? There's no one available. On the other hand, there's no team available for Russell either. So, It's a pointless battle right now. That's the key because everyone knows that Max has 1 year to go at Red Bull. So, anyone that's not under contract for 2027 is at risk. It's that simple. While Mercedes wrestles with its driver lineup and Russell's future, the clock is ticking on an even bigger challenge: the dawn of Formula One's 2026 regulations. In just 4 months, teams will roll out the very first versions of their all-new machines at a late January shakedown in Barcelona. But the truth is, the race to 2026 is already well underway, and the critical predictions about performance are being made now, long before a wheel even turns. The scope of the rule changes is staggering. Both chassis and power unit regulations are being overhauled, creating what many insiders are calling the toughest transition in F1 history. Engineers are tasked with marrying a completely redesigned chassis to radically efficient hybrid engines, ones that will split their power almost evenly between electric and combustion for the first time. Every team has had its sights set on 2026 for months, yet the development race is still a moving target. Aerodynamics are evolving daily, meaning designers must forecast the downforce levels their cars will actually generate come winter testing, while relying on nothing more than virtual models and simulators today. As Mercedes' trackside engineering director, Andrew Shovlin, explained, the car evolves week on week, and as the car performance changes, the results from the simulations change. There's an element where it's a moving target, trying to make sure that the chassis package is optimized for the engine and the power unit package. So we're building the complexity there, but it will be a difficult year. You've got a virtual representation of the car that we can run in a simulator. But you're trying to predict where we're going to be in 4 months' time in terms of downforce levels, because there's no point in doing all your work with something that will never actually run on the track. You want to be doing it with something that's representative of what you're going to roll out with. The 2026 reset won't just be about fresh engines and electronics. Alongside a revised power unit and ECU, the chassis regulations are scrapping ground effect concepts in favor of active aerodynamics. Tyre supplier Pirelli is slimming things down with narrower rubber, while the minimum weight limit drops from 800 kilograms to 768 kilograms, despite heavier batteries being on board. Add in F1's leap to fully sustainable fuels and the still-to-be-finalized rules around energy deployment, and the recipe for how these cars will actually race remains far from clear. Meanwhile, Andrew Shovlin has suggested Pirelli may also be caught in the middle of some tactical smokescreens, with teams deliberately shading their reported downforce figures to influence tyre construction and compound choices. He added that Pirelli are saying they're getting all sorts of different suggestions of where cars are going to be on end of straight loads. But we're all developing our cars in isolation. No one's seen anything, and these days you don't really hear anything from any other teams as to how they're getting on, so inevitably the most diversity you probably see is going to be straight off when everyone rolls their car out. The reality is, some will be doing better than others, and there may be a case that those that are doing particularly well want to downplay where they are. Some people might be presenting where they think they'll get to, other people might be presenting where they are today. Will Toto Wolff's holdout cause the George Russell contract situation to snowball into a bigger issue at Mercedes? Let's talk about it in the comments. And if you haven't yet, don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel to stay informed on the latest in Formula One. Thanks for watching.